Okay, awesome. All right, looks like we have a good number of people here, so I'll just get started. So thank you all for coming to our fourth meeting of the year. Today we have Mr. Rebboah speaking to us. As like a brief background, Mr. Rebboah graduated from Bellarmine in 2009, and then he went to Santa Clara, where he studied history and communication. After that, he went on to San Diego Law School and the Georgetown University Tax Center. And after completing all of his education, he now works at Berliner Cohen, which is a law firm in San Jose. So everyone, please give your attention to Mr. Rebboah. And
Well,
thank you for coming.
thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy to be here and talking to all you. It's a cool experience. It's a really cool club that you guys have started, and I've heard good things about it. I've been kind of envious that and we certainly didn't. So kudos to you guys for really taking off with this program. So what I'll do is I'll just start with a little bit of background on myself, talk to you a little bit about my experience, both at Bellarmine and then in my other education, talk to you a little bit about my job, my everyday day-to-day kind of role as a estate planning and tax attorney. And then we can talk a little bit about some kind of a professional advice that I would give not only to lawyers, but just young people starting in their career in general. And then we can just open it up to questions if that works for you guys. So my name is Brandon Rebboah. I'm the class of 2009 from Bellarmine. When I was at Bellarmine, I was a pretty involved student. I was a presidential ambassador when that was a brand new thing on campus. That was fun. I also was I played on the football team and was just involved in kind of the community as a whole, as a lot of you are. And I really enjoyed my time at Bellarmine. I'm a second generation Bell, and continue to be very involved with the school. I'm actually on the Board of Regents today for the school, and I really enjoy giving back to Bellarmine. That gave me so much, and really enjoy speaking to students when I have the opportunity. So at Bellarmine, you know, I'm always very thankful for the teachers that I had and the people that pushed me. I think that's my big thing that I want to get across today, is that you guys have a great foundation for not only the next steps in your education, but taking those steps in your professional development, in your careers moving forward. Is that Bellarmine has given you such a great foundation, is continuing to give you such a great foundation. So, you know, teachers like Dr. Sullivan, some of the other professors and teachers that I had, Jim Harville and Bob Healy, were just so influential in kind of giving me that work ethic, the academic work ethic that you need to succeed at Bellarmine, in college, and so on in your career. And I really think that Bellarmine did me a lot of service in that regard. So after Bellarmine, or when I was at Bellarmine, when I was a senior, they had an elective called American Law, and it was taught by Mr. Colucci. Mr. Colucci is an attorney. He went to law school. So I was pretty young. I knew that I wanted to work in some area with you know, financial planning, maybe even sports. I really liked sports. I was an athlete at the time, and I knew that something along those lines was for me. I knew that I wasn't so much a science type of guy, that I was really going to focus on some of the soft studies in college, like history or communication or something like that. That's what interested me. So I took this elective, American Law, with Mr. Colucci, and that was the first time that I really thought, oh, this is really interesting. I kind of like this law thing, and of course, it was just a very introductory constitutional law class, but it really caught my attention, and something that, oh, maybe this is something I want to do in the future. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind when I was doing my college applications, when I was applying to schools, and then kind of thinking about what major I would want. So I decided to go to Santa Clara, just down the road, and it was a great choice for me. I really valued the community there, and I really valued going to a school that was not only Catholic but Jesuit. That was just something that was important to me, because I had such a great experience at Bellarmine. So when I went to Santa Clara, I was a communication major and a history minor. And I also worked for the athletic department. I worked for the baseball team. So I was their basically stat guy for 4 years. I would travel with them. I would go to games with them. I would, you know, work in the office on the off days. And I really enjoyed that. And all of those things kind of put together for me early on in my college experience, that maybe I want to go to law school, and specifically at the time, maybe I want to be a sports agent. And so I was kind of getting all these experiences from different types of some areas, right? I was working with the baseball team, which I really liked, focusing on communication and history, which gave me a really solid foundation in not only speaking and writing, but the research aspect, which I didn't know at the time, but would be very, influential in law school moving forward. So I went through Santa Clara. I graduated in 2013. And then when I graduated from Santa Clara, I knew I wanted to go to law school. I had already started the application process. The application process for law school is very similar to what a lot of you are going through right now for college. There's a test that you have to take kind of similar to the SATs. It's called the LSAT. So I was studying for that and doing that, but I knew that I wanted to gain some more professional experience before I entered law school. That's something that a lot of law schools favor, is work experience before you go directly into law school. So I decided that, I still really was passionate about sports. I was still really passionate about going to law school, but kind of thinking about sports in the back of my mind. So I took a year between going to law school and from when I graduated Santa Clara. And I worked two places. I worked for a trust company, working in their trust department, kind of working with them to be like, I was a fiduciary manager. So what I was doing on a day-to-day basis is helping the financial institution kind of review trust documents and service their clients. So that is going to be something I'll talk about later, but is very similar to what I do now. I kind of am on the legal side of that instead of financial side of that. And then I was also working for the San Jose Sharks. So I worked for the Sharks. I was like a game day assistant. So I would go in and help mostly in the media relations department. And that was kind of the way I was getting a little bit of both from a lot of different professional development kind of career paths. So when I ultimately got accepted to law schools, the one that I ended up choosing was the University of San Diego, and I chose it for a couple of reasons. Academically, it was a great school. It was a Catholic school, which was important to me. It was in California, which was also important to me because I knew that I wanted to stay in this state, preferably probably in the Bay Area ultimately. And when you go to law school, you kind of have to think about that a little bit because it may affect where you're going to take the bar, and you have to be licensed in the state that you practice in. So it's not to say that you can't go to law school in one state and then practice in a different state, but just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind when you're thinking about it. So the University of San Diego also has a really good tax law program, and that was something I was interested in. And they, have a lot of sports teams, or had before the Chargers left and all that. We had a couple sports teams down there, so that was a kind of a good way for me to potentially kind of work in sports. So I started at the University of San Diego in 2014, studied law there, and your first year they kind of give you all the courses that you have to take. You don't really have any choice. In your second and third year, you get a little bit more flexibility to kind of determine what it is that you like in the law. And what I liked was the non-court aspect. So I was never the person that wanted to go to court and argue and kind of the things that people think of when they think of an attorney's everyday practice. That just wasn't for me. I wanted to be advising clients on strategy as it relates to their business holdings and their tax strategy and things like that. I never really wanted to be arguing in court. So when I was in law school, I got the opportunity to intern at a variety of different places. The first one is I worked in Sony's legal department. Sony Electronics is based in San Diego, so I got to work there and intern there, and that really opened my eyes to kind of the business side of the law a little bit more, and I really enjoyed that. I also got to go back to the trust company that I had worked at and do some of the similar work, and then also got the opportunity to intern or clerk at the firm that I'm currently with in law school. And what I quickly learned from all those experiences, and then some of my experiences in sports as well, is what I really liked was the ability to help people strategize and the ability to work with high net worth clients. At first, I thought when I started that it was just about sports. But what I learned through the process was it wasn't just about sports, really. It was more about advising clients and helping strategize for people that had these kind of intricate business planning opportunities or tax opportunities or estate planning opportunities. So that was a big realization to me. to kind of open up my view to not just athletes, but also CEOs and CFOs and people that work in tech, because a lot of the concepts are the same. It's really just what do they do for a living, and I realized quickly that that was something that wasn't so important to me. So I kind of broadened my view from sports into just kind of wealth planning in general from a legal perspective. So once I decided on that route, I was working at this firm in estate planning. Estate planning, for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, is planning for succession when you pass away, right? So from a tax perspective, from a inheritance perspective, what do you want to happen with your assets when you pass away? So that's part of what I do. The other part is kind of strategy involved around some of the planning for succession and dynastic planning for families. So how do we shift wealth from one generation to the next generation in the most tax efficient way possible? That's a little bit about what I do. So once I started learning that was what really interested in me, I was open to the opportunities that came my way, and I was blessed to be working for the firm, clerking for the firm that I got hired with. So when I was in law school, I worked at Berliner Cohen during the summers. I would come up from San Diego, work at the firm, and got to really know the people there, and really was able to make a name for myself at the firm. And they hired me right out of law school. So I've been at the firm since I finished law school, and I'm blessed to be there. I really like it. It's a great firm. It's a great old San Jose firm. It's the oldest firm in San Jose. It's a great opportunity for me, and it's really helps. It helped me come back to the area, because that was always the goal, was to come back to San Jose. So I think my first kind of nugget of information for you and advice is really be open to opportunities, right? And that was something that I learned through not only kind of college and law school, but afterwards is, at first I was so focused on, I want to do sports, and sports is all I want to do. But the more that I was, my eyes were open to other parts of the profession, I learned that it was less about sports and more about a variety of opportunities available to, strategize with clients. And that's something that was eye-opening to me. And I would, advise all of you to kind of keep an open mind when you're making these decisions. Obviously, you have goals and you want to stick to your goals, and you can do things to further those goals. But as those opportunities arise, be mindful that might lead you to somewhere that you might want to be. So that's kind of a little bit of background on how I got to where I am. I also went, after I finished at University of San Diego, while I was also practicing law, I went to Georgetown to get it's basically like a 1-year program, and you do like an intensive in tax law. So I have my LLM, they call it, in tax. So I studied tax law for a year after I became an attorney, which was another great opportunity and really helped advance my career a little bit. Let's see. I wanted to talk a little bit about what I think is good advice for all of you as you kind of talk about your career paths. Obviously, you have some time to decide, but I think what's really important is for you to understand that you have a great foundation at Bellarmine. Like I said, the teachers there and the curriculum that you have are really giving you a really solid foundation to build off of. No matter what you want to do, major in college or beyond, that'll be a really good starting point for you guys. And so I hope you realize that is, you don't see it yet, but you will when you get to college, is that you have a significant upper hand starting off, because you get it already as far as what the time you need to put in and how to kind of be successful academically. You all have learned that from your first day at Bellarmine. So embrace that when you start your college experience. As far as my job, what do I do on a day-to-day basis? I would say that my practice, like I said, is not court intensive. I don't go to court very often. I don't argue as much. I'm really working with a client to solve their problems, but also help plan for their future. So you can think of me as kind of an advisor in my group. My department at the firm is kind of an advisor. So we help people think about, okay, what's the most tax efficient way to leave an asset to your children, what's the most tax efficient way to give money to charity, to do whatever you want to do in life, whatever you're passionate about, and however you want to plan for your future. How do we do it? That's really where I come in, and where my practice, or somebody that is an estate planning attorney, what their role is. So I draft a lot of documents. I draft trusts, right, which is kind of like a will, but a little bit more complicated. I draft operating agreements, so I help people create companies that they might hold different assets in and investments in, and things of that nature. As far as the word, an attorney, there are so many different types of attorney, and I think before I even went to law school, I didn't really fully comprehend everything that you could do with a law degree. So there are a lot of people that litigate every day. They go to court and they are arguing in front of a judge, and they have an opposing counsel arguing different facts, kind of like you would think of in speech and debate, which is great. And that's, I have a lot of friends that practice in that area. That was just not something that I was interested in. There are attorneys that work on just different types of matters. So they might just work with, employee related issues. They might just work with specific types of entities. There are so many different things you can do with a law degree. I even have friends that went to law school that don't practice as an attorney, but just use that background in education to help them in their different roles. So whether it's in some human resources role or some type of advisor at a company, you can do so many different things with a law degree. So for those of you that are interested, I'm happy to talk further about, roles that you can use your law degree in. Is really expansive. So I think other advice that I would have as you're starting your professional development, like I said, be open to opportunity, whatever that might be, right? If it's not perfectly situated for what your goal is, be open-minded. You might learn something that really interests you. You might also learn what doesn't interest you. And I think that is just as important and more valuable than knowing what does interest you is what doesn't interest you, because you can then tailor your goals and your career progression, your professional development accordingly. And I think that's a great strength to have, is to know what you don't want to do. For me, right, I knew after taking just one chemistry class in high school that was just not for me. So I think you just need to learn your strengths, learn what interests you, and apply it in different ways, and be open to the opportunities that might be in the general vicinity of your goals and your likes and interests. I think that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just be open to opportunity. Other pieces of advice: continue to work hard, right? You guys are all good students. You come from a good school, and you're going to go great places. They've, like I said, given you a foundation to do that. Continue to work hard. I think, for me personally, college, law school, my time at Georgetown, it was just work ethic, right? It's just, what can you do to set yourself apart from your peers? And the same thing in my profession, right? What can you do to kind of help your client and take those extra couple steps to really get the outcome that you want? I want to kind of leave a little bit more time for questions specifically, so we can talk about education. We can talk about my day-to-day, or just other pieces of advice. So I really want to leave it up to you two to throw some questions my way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And before we get started on questions, if any of you have thought of questions while Mr. Rebboah was speaking, just remember to send Samarth and I a Teams chat, and we can ask it to him. But while people are thinking about that, I was actually really inspired by what you said about being open to opportunities. So you mentioned in college that you were part of the baseball team and were sort of their stat guy. I was just wondering if you could talk to how we can use like extracurriculars and academics together to bolster our college education, rather than just academics, which seems to be the traditional view.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it goes without saying that academics are important, but for me, I was really motivated to just like a lot of you, to kind of develop myself professionally. I wanted to learn, and there were other ways to learn than the classroom. Obviously, I had to spend my time studying and getting good grades, and that was very important. But for me, this opportunity with the baseball team was was really neat because I got to not only be in class and learn things, but also learn a little bit more professionally. So yes, I was working for a baseball team and I was taking stats, but that also meant that I was talking to members of the athletic administration and working with them. It also meant that I was talking to employees from the other schools that were coming to visit about things to do. So I really learned a lot of professional skills in that extracurricular activity. So whether it's through an internship or something on campus where you can develop those interpersonal skills and develop what it means to kind of work and be an employee and be in a collegial environment, I think that's absolutely beneficial. So I would certainly recommend that you look for those opportunities at all costs. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we had another guy come in with a question. He said, what are some of the biggest differences and similarities between working in the tech industry and the sports industry from the law perspective?
Yeah, well, I think they're certainly different in the sense that you have, the way you might acquire your wealth is obviously very different, right? Playing sports or developing software or what the case may be. But what I found is that I liked helping people plan for their finances, plan their tax planning, plan for their future. So at the end of the day, to me, I learned that it didn't matter if the person had signed a contract with the San Francisco Giants or worked at Google. It was that they were inspired to do something, whether it was succession planning or charitable work with the money that they had and the wealth that they created. So that's really the biggest similarity. Is it didn't matter what you did for a living. It was that you were inspired to do something with it and plan for the future. And so that to me is the biggest similarity.
Awesome. I had another question coming from a student. So he was just wondering if you could describe a little bit about the process of taking the LSAT and how to prepare for it and things like that.
Yeah, so the LSAT, it's a little similar to, like I said, the SAT or the ACT. You take practice tests. You might get a tutor. You might go to a class. You might just get a book, depending on your learning styles. But the LSAT is a little bit different than the SAT in the sense that it is a logic test, right? So it's not testing your necessarily, your knowledge of specific areas of academia. It's testing your ability to apply a set of facts and come up with the answer based on the set of rules they've given you, right? So think about it as a little bit, some of them are kind of like math problems, but you don't need to necessarily do the math. It's, if Sally and Joe are going to the movies and Joe won't go with Sally, but Sally will go with Susie, how many different possibilities of, outcomes could you have of people going? Something like that. So it's very logic based in how quickly can you apply the rules that are given to you to get to the outcome. And that's essentially what law school is too. You're given a set of facts. You need to be able to synthesize through the facts and then apply it to the case at hand or what you're working on, right? So use cases from the past, use different sources of law, and then be able to synthesize and give your answer coherently and in a manner that helps your client. So that's really what the LSAT is for. As far as me personally, how did I study for it? I took a class, right? And it's the same kind of SAT providers, really. I think Kaplan's a big SAT provider of classes like that. That's who I use for the SAT as well, particularly because it worked for me on the SAT, so I decided to take it for the LSAT as well. And then you just practice, and you might take 2 or 3 practice tests and ultimately take the test.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to test prep, especially a lot of juniors we have.
Yes, it's exactly the same, just a different test, but the way that you go about preparing for it is very similar.
Right. So we had another student. This is a bit specific question, but what type of law does Berliner Cohen specialize in, or do you do everything?
Yeah, so we are a full service firm. For the most part, we practice in a variety of different areas, right? So we have a very large estate planning group. That's what I do, right? So working with people to plan their legacy. We also have a very big real estate group that works with different commercial real estate builders and real estate investors throughout the Valley and throughout California. We have people that litigate. We have a variety of people that work in employment law. We have a little bit of everything. It's a full service firm. The only thing we don't really do is criminal law.
Awesome. So before the meeting started, you were talking a lot about your involvement with Father Wade. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to how faith has influenced your professional journey.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So, like I said, when I started, when I was doing my college application, so when I was kind of right where a lot of you are right now, I knew for me that my background, my faith, my experience at Bellarmine, I wanted to go to a Catholic college. I wanted to go to a Jesuit college, and so that's primarily where I applied, and those were the schools that were on the top of my list because that was just what was important to me, and that certainly varies from person to person, but it was important to me. So I got another 4 years to go to another Jesuit school and continue to develop my faith and to kind of be a man for others and have the same kind of concepts that are applied at Bellarmine applied at the college stage. And so once I got through that, it had already been 8 years, so why was I going to change then? And I knew that when I went into law school, I wanted to go to somewhere that was similar. Although law school, there's less emphasis on the faith-based application of you kind of separate that from the law. I still wanted to be at a university that fostered that and would have the resources available to do that as well. So I went to the University of San Diego, which is a Catholic school, and I was involved in their St. Thomas More Society. So St. Thomas More is the patron saint of the legal profession. So I was involved in that, and that allowed me to continue kind of to foster my faith a little bit. And then Georgetown, same thing, another Jesuit institution. I knew I wanted to be in a place where I was not only learning the law and learning tax law, but also could give me a little bit of the other kind of intangible qualities of being in a Catholic or Jesuit institution. But kind of more generally, I'll take it a step back. And when I was at Bellarmine, I went on an immersion trip. I went to Guatemala. It was one of the first classes to go to Guatemala when it was between my junior and senior year. And it really struck me. It was something that I was really passionate about. I really had a great experience. And when I came back, my closest friend and I, we said, wasn't that such a great experience? Isn't it very cool that was afforded to us? And when we were in college, our freshman year in college, we decided perhaps I want to give that opportunity to people that can't otherwise afford it or can't otherwise have that available access through a Bellarmine or a Santa Clara or an institution that can provide those experiences to them. So we went through the early stages of starting a nonprofit charity that could foster that for other people. And what we quickly found out is starting a nonprofit involves a lot of legal work. You have to file for certain applications and you have to do a lot. So we got a little bit stifled in our process. We never really finished our goal because there was so much legal work involved and we were young college students. We didn't have necessarily the ability to pay for it or the acumen to do it ourselves. So, but what I did learn through the process is, this is another way that if I went to law school, I could help people. I could help people in the community that have these great ideas and ambitions and want to start these nonprofits. Maybe that's something that I'm interested in. So part of my practice now actually is helping those people that have those aspirations and are doing their planning, and maybe they're planning for themselves, right? They've done well for themselves and they want to give a little bit back, is creating those nonprofits. So it's kind of come full circle in the sense that I'm able to take something that I was passionate about and then apply it and help other people be able to effectuate that in their lives and for charities that they're passionate about. So that's a really neat experience for me. I really like working with one. I'm actually working on one right now with a Bellarmine parent, and that's been really fruitful. It's really, really neat to see what they're passionate about and helping them create that charity.
Wow, it's really interesting, really insightful. Thank you. And we had another question, kind of relating back to your time at Bellarmine, and this is a general question that we get a lot. Which classes at Bellarmine were the most impactful to you and your law career?
Yeah, so certainly the one that kind of spurred the little spark in the back of my mind about whether I wanted to go to law school was American law, which I don't know if it's still offered, but it was a class taught by Mr. Colucci, and Mr. Colucci kind of just walked through the basics of constitutional law, and that was something that really just got in the back of my mind. I would say all of my English classes are something that I remember very well, whether it was at the time Mr. Harville, Mr. Healy, some of those teachers that I had were very, very insightful, because a big part of my job is writing. And so both at Bellarmine and then at Santa Clara as a communication major, being an effective writer is such a big part of my job that those were very important to me. I would say also my history classes, right? History, a lot of people that go into law school are political science, communication, history majors. And the reason being is that you learn to read and write, and you learn to synthesize information, and you learn to articulate it back in a kind of coherent way. So my history classes at Bellarmine as well are something that I think gave me a good foundation for that. So Dr. Sullivan, thank you very much.
Awesome. So I was wondering a little bit about your engagement with Bellarmine now. You mentioned that you're on the board of regents, and I was just wondering, like, what sort of drove you to give back to Bellarmine, and like, what about the Bellarmine experience do you value the most in that sense?
Yeah, well, I think that what I value most about the Bellarmine experience is twofold. First, right, it's the ability to foster my own faith and my own kind of spirituality that they gave me. That's certainly important, and Bellarmine played a big role in that. The other is the brotherhood, right? The community of Bellarmine. That's second to none. You'll learn when you graduate that there's no place like it, and those relationships that you built really do last. So I think that's what drove me to give back. I was always drawn back because of the people that I had fostered relationships with, whether it was they worked there or my peers and my colleagues. Bellarmine has been such a big influence in my life, right? I mentioned I'm a second generation Bell as well, so I saw it from an early age that all of my dad's friends were still his friends from his graduating class at Bellarmine. His closest friends are still the ones that he had back then, and it's the same with me, and it's the same with a lot of my classmates. So that was something that certainly drove me back in why I wanted to give back. And so the way I give back is I serve on the board. You mentioned that, but I'm just able to use the skills that Bellarmine helped me achieve, right? So I work and use my law degree when I can, right? So I serve on committees that allow me to kind of use some of those skills.
That's great, Mr. Rebboah. Thank you for the answer. We don't have any other questions that were sent in to me, Ashok. Do you have any from your side?
I just have one personal question that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
That I was interested in. So you talked about in your day-to-day that you review trust documents and service clients. I was just wondering, how big of a role does research play versus writing, and like what does your day-to-day look like in that sense? Like, what's the biggest part of your job?
Yeah, so certainly when you're an attorney, research is going to play a role. You need to be confident in the answer, right? So you have to go out and find it if you don't know it, and you should always go out and find it, even if you do know it, just because you want to be diligent. I would say day to day, it varies depending on your practice area, and it varies on what you're doing. But I would say most of mine is drafting documents based on certain goals. And then when the need arises, going out and finding the answer in the tax code or the probate code or whatever kind of statute that I'm using at the time.
Awesome. And just out of curiosity, did any Bellarmine alums influence you to starting a law career, or was it mainly the classes you mentioned?
It was mostly the classes. I certainly knew attorneys that went to Bellarmine, and they were very helpful when I was going through the process of applying, or even early in my career when I was in law school and trying to kind of find my way there. So I would say that's another tidbit of advice for all of you is really utilize that Bellarmine network, and you're going to see moving forward that there are so many Bells, not only in your class, but in all of the classes that are willing to help and mentor and give guidance to the younger Bells. It's a really kind of neat fraternity that really does help advance the careers of the alumni, and so certainly take advantage of that.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions we had. So if no one else has anything else to add, Mr. Rebboah, thank you so much for coming and talking to the guys. You're actually the first lawyer we've had in quite a while, so I'm sure it's going to be very helpful for people who are considering that profession. Yeah,
like I said, I'm happy to answer specific questions about what it's like to be a lawyer, what it's like about to practice the law or law school, or any questions that people have. So feel free to reach out. But I think my takeaway for you all today is kind of three main things. The first, be open to the opportunities that present themselves. Second, continue to work hard as you're doing, and that'll give you the opportunities that you want. And then third is just to continue to be passionate about whatever you do, right? So whatever it is that interests you, find that passion and go with it. And if you do that, then whatever career you end up in, you're going to be happy and fulfilled, and find ways to give back, right? So whether it's through Bellarmine or through different charities, use the skills that you develop, whatever they might be, to help the community. And I think that is what Bellarmine has taught all of us, right? Is to kind of be a man for others. And there are so many ways that you can do that professionally. I encourage you guys to continue to live by that mantra once you graduated from Bellarmine.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our members for attending. Just remember to fill out that attendance form.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was great. Like I said, if there are any other follow-up questions, Ashok, you have my email, so you can certainly pass it on. But thank you very much, and go Bells.
Go Bells.
Thank you, Mr. Rebboah.
Bye. Thank you.
Go Bells. Thank you. Piggy.